5 legal basics when putting out any content.
Make sure to have commercial terms and have each party agree to them. Have an open discussion about the IP rights. Make sure that each party understands who has what rights and how they may use the recording, for example. And have the other party either agree to the terms digitally or have them check a checkbox. And take note of this episode and make sure that all the terms are included.
Welcome to the Powerful Marketing Tips podcast, created for overwhelmed business owners who want to build, run, and organize their marketing for good. And here's a brief overview of our guest. How much do you know about intellectual property? Like, what'll happen if you release content without permission? Selene Snippe joins us to talk about the legal aspects for entrepreneurs and creators who want to host guests on one of their platforms. Selene Snippe is an international contract lawyer based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and she left her career in big law to use her skills to help service entrepreneurs and online creators like you. In her contract shop, you'll find contracts specifically for online entrepreneurs and online creators like bloggers and podcasters, YouTubers, influencers. She also has a legal subscription service for established entrepreneurs. If you want to ensure that things you do are properly handled from the legal perspective, listen up.
Hi friends, I am Marilise and thank you for tuning in to today's episode. The topic around guest agreement may sound too legal, but I promise I will do my best to ensure it will be practical for you. Welcome, Selene, to our podcast.
Thank you, Marilise. I will try my best as well to make this as interesting as possible and not too dry. I am a lawyer and this is all very interesting to me, but I'm sure people don't really want to get into details on contracts. So I'll try to keep it short and to the point.
Perfect. We really appreciate that. So thank you for being here with us. Briefly, please tell us something about yourself that was not in the introduction. We would love to get to know, our guests personally too. So tell us where you're from and what kind of person you are in your free time.
Yeah, sure. So I am living in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. But my mother is American, so therefore my accent, I think people hear that. Mm-hmm. So we do get to visit our family in the States sometimes as well. And I also have family here in the Netherlands. And in my free time, well, I love to go shopping. A lot of people have all these hobbies in sports. That is not my sport. I love to shop. That is my exercise. And that's a little about me. And I started my law practice actually this year in 2022, when this episode was recorded. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a kind of a solo entrepreneur struggling with marketing myself. So
very good. So I understand that it's your first time being a solo entrepreneur.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
I used to work in big law. It's quite grueling, but you learn a lot. And I'm very grateful for that experience. But I think like any other entrepreneur, I kind of had this urge to start something for myself. And I thought that was the time to start. Yeah.
I think that's very good that you did that. And it's always, there's always a good time to start. You should never procrastinate with that, right? And I know that you are also visiting our mastermind groups and you are a member of our community, and I really appreciate that. And I do hope that you are getting the support and insights and connections from there as well.
Oh, definitely. It's the most practical mastermind I have ever attended, and I have attended quite a few this year, especially since starting on my own. And I love the guests you have on there, and the community is just like a real quality community with people who really want to help. So yeah, I love your mastermind for sure.
Wow, thank you. But let's dive into today's topic now. I have been creator myself and collaborator, last few years, and no one has never made an official agreement with me. And I have not asked for it myself too. So I am guilty. And I just wanted to say that out loud and clear for everybody. So Selene, please explain to our listeners and to me, what is this guest agreement and why we need one?
Yeah, so a guest agreement is an agreement that people use when they are a guest on someone else's platform. So let's say you are a guest or having a guest on your podcast, like this one, for example, or your YouTube channel, or let's say a Zoom meeting where someone gives a presentation. That is what you use the agreement for. So the parties have an agreement on how that is supposed to go and who the ownership rights of the copyrights, for example, are allocated to, and basically how it's allowed to be used.
Okay, so maybe we can talk about this and taking our agreement here as an example. Would you mind?
Yeah, sure. So I think the most important part, I do want to make a small little disclaimer here, as I am an attorney, and for the listeners and viewers of this episode, I want to make sure that they understand that this is really for informational and educational purposes only, and this does not create any sort of attorney-client relationship. So definitely always consult your lawyer first. But yeah, I'm sorry, I have to give this disclaimer. But to get into the meat of it, I would say there are certain rights attached to a recording. And you want to make sure that they're either waived or people consent to the recording, and that you know who those copyrights are allocated to. So I would say let's begin with the consent. Regardless of which country or state you are in, whether it allows you to record someone without consent or not, if you're part of the conversation, you need their consent. Why? Because they have certain personality rights. If you use someone else's name or likeness, image, voice in your content, then that person has to give their consent to that, because they might object to that if you use it for commercial purposes, so for your podcast or promotional purposes or whatever. So and that is what you have a contract for. You could say, like, well, they appeared on this podcast, they appeared on this Zoom meeting, so obviously they consent. Now you really need the explicit consent of that person.
Okay, but I have to ask, agreements over emails should also be legitimate at the court, or what are your thoughts here?
Yes, emails are also legitimate in court for sure. And there is definitely some debate on that, as contracts are definitely awkward, and I'll get into how to contract with someone in a less awkward way. But there's some debate on that, on like, well, can't you just agree on things by email? Or even in the recording, can you not just have someone consent to it in the recording, because then it's also basically set in stone, right? Yeah, that is possible, and it's better than nothing, that's for sure. So definitely get that consent on some kind of medium. But there are a lot of things that might not be covered by an email or in the recording. as you've seen in our contract, it's quite a contract. You can ask me to agree to all of that in the recording, but we'll be sitting here for a while. So there are certain things that are not covered, and you want to make sure that you have full consents and you completely understand what you are agreeing to as for your personality rights and also your copyrights.
But let's talk a little bit about the list of things that should be there, or the topics. I mean, besides legal reasons, there are also like practical reasons. For me, it's like protecting your brand with the brand guidelines, for example. How to,
Yes.
yeah, let's dive into those list of topics that should be covered.
Okay, sure, yeah. So, well, actually, one of number one on the list should be the copyrights themselves. So, basically, to give like a short explanation of who owns which copyrights, in a recording like this, you have the a conversation or an interview. So we are both actually adding value or substance to this recording. In this case, this would likely be co-ownership of the copyrights. So both you and I have copyrights to the contents of this recording. I say contents because you also have the copyrights to the recording itself, and you are the owner of the copyrights to the recording itself. There are two layers. You have the contents and then you have the recording itself. If it were, for example, like a Zoom presentation that would be uninterrupted, then the person giving the presentation, so the guest, would have the sole copyrights to that part of the recording. So, but not the entire recording. So in the agreements, you have to agree who those copyrights belong to and who gets to use them and for what purposes. So in this case, you would have, you could either license your copyrights or you could assign them. If you license them, then you still remain the owner of your own copyrights, but you give the other person the right to use it. But you still have control over what happens with the recording.
Okay, that brings me to, should we agree on exactly, what kind of content or what are the formats that, the other part will be publishing, and where should it all be there? Should we include how many times you can publish the information, or what else is there? So many questions.
Definitely. Yes. So if you license your copyrights, then you can agree on the places where the recording can be used. Also, the purpose for which they may be used. Can they use it for whatever reason? No, you probably don't want that. You probably want them to use it for either the publication of the recording, like, for example, this episode on the specific podcast, or for promotional purposes, like on your social media, for example. So it's important to specify those purposes, and also with regards to the editing of the recording, you could agree to have that person give prior consent before the other person may publish an edited part of the recording. However, I would not do that, whether you're the guest or the host or podcaster in this case, because if I were to make like a fun little skit of this recording, for example, and want to publish it on my social media, and I have to ask your approval first, I'm likely not going to make many of them, right? And you want your recording to be promoted as much as possible. So what you could do is you could agree in the contract in which cases they can use it, but also when you can ask that person to take it down. So let's say in the case where it would disparage the other person, well, that is an obvious reason to take it down. You were like discrediting them or giving them a bad reputation, basically. But if it were to like cause confusion about that person, let's say we only use a small part of this recording and that part could be misconstrued, then you also want to make sure that that person can stop that if it negatively affects them.
Okay, so that brings me to another question. If we have now an agreement, will content require pre-approval by brand, before publishing, or by you?
No.
Okay.
No, because it's already in the contract where it's allowed to be used for. And if you were to use it for other purposes than is stated in the contract, then I could ask you to stop that and take it down.
Okay. Should we include also things we don't want you to do with this interview or with the materials we put out there?
Yes, definitely. And that is something that I always rant on is the fact that sometimes people have, great intentions and at first they had different intentions with what to do with a recording, like in case of like a YouTube video, for example, that they just post it on their channel and that's it. But then it has happened quite a lot where people have this recording and they thought, it was for free and they basically did it for free, both parties. And then suddenly this YouTuber uses it for their paid course. And you've never been paid for it. You actually did, well, kind of out of goodwill to make that YouTuber grow, for example. But then it turns out that they're using it for this $5,000 course and you are not getting paid at all for it.
Okay, that's a very good example.
Yes.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, it does happen a lot. And this is why you have these types of agreements.
Oh, that's very strong. Yeah, I love that. So what about timeline and milestone details?
So when it comes to the timeline of the contracts, you mean, or the...
I mean timeline with the contract. I mean, for example, this episode here, it can live like next 10 years.
Yes.
So, or even 100 years. We don't know that, right? So how should it be described in one agreement, the timeline? I mean, because maybe after 5 years you will give me a call that, I don't want this episode to be live anymore. So,
well, very good question. Well, in this case, we basically have an indefinite term. So it doesn't matter for how long. If you choose to take it down after 1 week, you take it down after 1 week. However, and this is where, money comes into the picture. If someone has paid the guest to be on a podcast episode, for example, or a YouTube video, then, the guest is not really going to care much about how long you use it for. They got paid. It's yours to do what you will with it. Within, the terms of the contract. But in other cases, the guest could have paid the podcaster to be on their podcast. It actually happens a lot. Some people are confused, oh, people really pay to be on podcasts? Yes, they pay to be on certain podcasts to promote their businesses. and themselves. In that case, you definitely want to make sure that they have that podcast episode on air for quite some time. You don't want to pay 20 to 40 to 50K for one episode if it's taken down after half a year, for example. That's not what you paid for. So in that case, it's very important to create a timeline or a term for which the episode at least has to be on air.
That's very interesting. So you also mentioned, that about the IP rights, what a release agreement can do. So please open this topic for us here as well.
Yeah, sure. So you basically have two options. You can either license your copyrights, and in that case, like we said, you could control whether that person uses the episode for their free YouTube channel or a course, for example. Or you could assign your copyrights as the guest. And in that case, the host or podcaster or YouTuber has the full ownership of your rights. So then you basically can't tell them what to do with your episode. So that is definitely to the advantage of the podcaster or host of the platform. Because they don't have to ask you for any permissions, and you can't tell them what to do with it anymore. Sometimes you might want to do that if you get paid enough for it, but that does mean that you cannot control what they do with it. Of course, their rights are not like limitless. I mean, if they disparage you or use like some sort of compilation of your words to the point where you're saying something completely different, that is not allowed. The court will not allow that. But they could use it for advertisements, for example, or like I said, their courses in that case. So it's very important to think about what you want to what you want to do in that case.
No, that's very interesting. I love the examples. And so tell me, what else the host, like myself, or guest, like yourself, should look for and agree on?
So one of the things, and this is a little bit boring, but for sure, the release from liability. So in the contract, you always want to have a provision that releases the host from any damages and liability for using their name or likeness or image in the recording, but also the guest wants that as well, because the guest is likely going to use parts of the recording as well to promote the YouTube video or the podcast episode. So you want that from both sides. Then, of course, you want to include the logistics of the recording, how long the recording is going to take, for example, just so you are on the same page with that. You also want to make sure that as the host, and maybe also as the guest actually, not have any obligations. So if, for example, you think this recording is complete crap, you don't want to air this, then you should have the right not to air it, right? And unless, you paid for it or whatever, then you might want to have that person at least air it if you paid for it. And in other cases, you just get your money back, basically. But you don't want to have that obligation. Also, for example, promotion. Do you have certain promotional obligations? Do you have to, as a guest or host? That is one of them, because ultimately you want to have listeners, you want to have eyeballs. So that's one of them. Even if you don't get paid, definitely make sure to have that specified in the contract, because let's say, and that goes for both sides. So let's say the YouTuber is not a huge YouTuber, doesn't have a huge following, and this guest does this for free. And later it turns out that the YouTuber is a huge success. They get like 2 million followers, and maybe that's also thanks to that one episode. You don't want that guest to come back to you to say, hey, I want to get compensation for that video. You got this much money off of ads, so I deserve at least this much, right?
But they cannot do that, can they?
They could, and otherwise they could ask you to take it down because their copyrights are in it.
Very good point. Okay.
Yes, so they have certain rights to, they could ask for royalties even for the license, you know? And it all depends on what the court decides is reasonable in that case, on what you get, whether you get paid, and if so, how much. So you definitely not want to have any conflicts about that.
So I understand I have two options. Either I will do all the contracts or I will not become famous.
Basically. It's one or the other. I don't know which one is worth more.
Yep. Love that.
Yeah. And yeah, the same goes for the guests as well. I mean, if it's a tiny little business, but that one YouTube video made them a huge success, and they are selling a lot of products because of that one video, you know, that YouTuber could also go after the guest for some sort of compensation. So yeah, you definitely want to have that included in your contract.
So many details. So I want to touch for a second. You mentioned earlier that the contracts should be done less awkward way. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So let's say you are the host, and you invited this person to be a guest on your episode or channel. Then there's definitely a less awkward way than sending them a contract by email that they have to sign. You just invited them and suddenly they have to read this 12-page contract. It's awkward. So another way to do that is by creating terms. So you turn that contract into terms and conditions that they can agree to. Like in this case, you have a form that someone can fill out online with the images to use and the links to insert in the show notes and stuff. And in that form, you can actually include the terms, and you can have them agree by checking the checkbox next to it, in which the link is embedded to the terms. And that way you have a perfectly fine agreement. Of course, do include in the terms that agreeing to those terms by checking a checkbox constitutes an actual e-signature, right? And that way, like, most people don't read them, to be honest. I mean,
I know.
Yeah. But that way you do have your rights set in stone. So that is a way to do it. A way less awkward way to do it. So
yeah, easier even.
Yeah, definitely.
Because sometimes even the signing can be an obstacle. because when you're working, internationally, for example, we are working as well with Europe and with the States, and we don't have all the same technical. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. We don't use same maybe apps for that, applications
Yes.
and platforms and things like that. So it might be also a very tricky part. So that's why it's also easier to use terms and conditions, right?
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm,
Yes. And otherwise you have to send them separately by email, and they might not actually check their emails, and you're getting closer to that date, and it comes to that point where you're like, well, will you please sign the contract before we actually record? That all happens. Yeah.
Oh my God, it is so good. So please tell, where can people find you and connect with you? Because I'm sure they want to do that. They need to do that, let's be honest.
Well, thank you. So they can either find me on my website, SeleneTheLawyer.com. I started blogging on there too. So if you want to know more details about the legalities of podcasting or being a YouTuber, you can find content there. I also am on TikTok now since a couple of weeks. It's been a lot of fun, quite a learning curve, but a lot of fun. And I'm most active on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And we will put those links next to this episode so people can connect with you.
Awesome.
Selene, is there any questions that you wish I would ask to you? I mean, something important that we should have talked about, because, it's a very important topic.
Oh. I guess is when you should use an agreement like this and where you can find them. You can find some free guest release forms online. Are they going to cover everything that we just talked about? Likely not, but make sure to take note of everything we talked about in this podcast and insert that in the contract for sure. At least have something on paper, or in a worst case scenario, at least have them consent on your recording.
That's very good. Thank you. And you have contract shop. I love this idea. So
Yes.
you can, so our listeners can go and look for a right contract from there as well. So last but not the least, are you ready for a 1-minute podcast part?
Sure.
So I will ask 3 questions, and you have only a minute to answer each one of them. Okay?
Okay.
Let's do this. Please share a song that inspires you and why.
So that would be My Way by Frank Sinatra.
Beautiful.
The reason why is because if you know the lyrics, I fall flat on my face all the time. I think most entrepreneurs do all the time. And sometimes when a few things go wrong, or even one thing goes wrong, I think the entire world is going to end. And I'm quite dramatic. But when I listen to this song, I realize I just have to pick myself back up again and just get to it again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Thank you. And that's, what entrepreneurship is all about, right?
Yeah.
We just have to learn from those, mistakes. And very good. Thank you. Next question. Please share a quote you think our listeners should know and why.
So my quote would be, if you take care of the work will take care of you. And that is a quote from Ryan Serhant. If you've watched $1 Million Listing New York, you know who that is. It's the guy with the gray hair. And this is something that I even have as a screensaver on my phone. as an entrepreneur myself, like the scariest thing is not having a fixed salary every month, and it can be like kind of scary not knowing when the next payments will be. And so this is a quote that I live by, is that, well, as long as I work hard and I make sure to put everything in that I have, then eventually I'll be okay. So far I am.
And you will be okay.
Yeah.
I just love that. So inspirational.
Thank you.
So, and the last question is really a wrap up from today's topic. So, 5 legal basics when putting out any content.
Okay, so make sure to have commercial terms and have each party agree to them. Have an open discussion about the IP rights. Make sure that each party understands who has what rights and how they may use the recording, for example. And have the other party either agree to the terms digitally or have them check a checkbox. And take note of this episode and make sure that all the terms are included.
Very good. I think it was 5. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
No, it was amazing. So really appreciate your time. Thank you for being here today and keep on doing, a great job helping people with the law.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's all we've got for this episode of the Powerful Marketing Tips podcast. But make sure to link up with us at our free monthly international mastermind event. Just go to powerful-marketers.com/mastermind. We would really appreciate it if you would rate this podcast and leave a comment wherever you tune in to listen. That will help us and other potential new listeners. Until next time.